July 9th. The deadline is here. Trump's 90-day tariff pause is about to expire.
To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
Yep, he really said that. And like it or not, Trump is serious about tariffs. And the next move he makes could mean deals, delays, or economic detonation. Will your next Walmart trip cost more? Will global markets shake? And who's about to get punished or passed? In this video, I'll break down what's happening, what might happen next, and what it means for your wallet, your investments, and your daily costs. But first, before we dive into Trump's strategy and the July 9 chaos, let's get clear on one simple thing. What exactly is a tariff? Part 1. What are tariffs? Let's start with the basics. What exactly is a tariff? A tariff is basically just a tax on imported goods. That's it. Nothing fancy. It's a tax, plain and simple. Let me give you an example. Let's say you buy a $30 t-shirt from Vietnam. If the US slaps a 10% tariff on that shirt, now it costs $33. That extra $3, it doesn't go to the clothing store. It doesn't go to workers. It goes straight to Uncle Sam. And before you ask, no, it doesn't fix potholes. It just disappears into the government's budget black hole, never to be seen again, like your high school gym shorts. Now, why do tariffs exist? Well, the idea is that if foreign goods become more expensive, Americans will be more likely to buy American-made products instead. It's a way to protect domestic jobs and industries by making imported stuff less competitive. It also pressures foreign companies to set up shop in the US, create jobs, and avoid the tariffs altogether. That's the theory, anyway. Now, here's where Trump comes in. Trump's floated the idea of a universal 10% tariff on all foreign imports. That's not a small move. We're not just talking about a couple $1 billion here. We're talking about $400 billion in new tax revenue every single year. That's like adding a whole new IRS stream, just from taxing your phone case, your vacuum, and your kid's Halloween costume. So, is this a smart move to rebuild American manufacturing? Or a fast track to inflation and global backlash? Well, let's find out what's actually happening. Because that 10% tariff might be coming sooner than you think. You see, 3 months ago, Trump hit pause on some of these massive tariffs. But that pause ends on July 9th, and what happens next could shake the global economy. Let's break it down. Part 2, Trump's current plan. 90-day pause ends July 9th. Back in April, Trump declared what he called Liberation Day. And no, it wasn't a holiday. It was a massive tariff bomb. Tariffs on imports jumped from about 3% to over 25%, the highest in over 100 years. Markets panicked, inflation fears spiked, and then Trump hit the pause button. A 90-day freeze on the worst of the tariffs, kind of like a timeout during a shouting match. That pause, it ends July 9th, as in this week. So now everyone, countries, companies, investors, is holding their breath. What happens next? According to trade experts, we're looking at 3 possible outcomes, or, as I like to call them, the handshake deals for countries that play ball, the timeout card for countries negotiating in good faith, the tariff hammer for countries Trump wants to make an example of, and depending on which bucket your country falls into, you might walk away with a handshake or get hit with tariffs so high they come with a side of economic whiplash. So, the 90-day tariff pause is ending soon, and the clock is ticking. What could actually happen once the deadline hits? Will we see big trade deals, extended delays, or will tariffs ramp up and shake things up even more? Let's dive into the 4 most likely scenarios and what they mean for global trade and your wallet. Part 3, what could happen next? 4 possible paths forward. Now that the tariff deadline is here, the big question is, what's Trump going to do next? Well, based on what we know, what he said, and what insiders are predicting, there are 4 possible outcomes. Let's call them. 1, the handshake deals. Remember when Trump said he'd get 90 deals in 90 days? Yeah, that didn't happen. But a few handshakes did. So far, we've seen trade agreements, or at least frameworks, with China, the UK, and Vietnam. Vietnam's deal? Pretty creative. 20% tariff on most goods, 40% if it's a pass-through from other countries. But in return, the US gets more market access in Vietnam, tariff-free. China's situation? Call it a trade truce. 30% tariffs are still there, but rare earth exports are flowing again while talks continue. Next countries up? India and Japan. India looks closer to the finish line. Their negotiators are basically camping in DC. 2, the timeout card. These are the countries that haven't closed the deal but are playing nice. They're not getting new tariffs yet. They're getting more time. Think of this as Trump handing out a keep negotiating, but don't make me mad card. Candidates here include South Korea and, again, Vietnam. Experts say they might get a grace period, maybe until Labor Day, so no deal yet, but no punishment either. Just a holdover. 3. The tariff hammer. Here's where things get heated. Some countries are likely to face serious tariff hikes, not because they can't make a deal, but because Trump wants to make an example. The European Union is most at risk here. Why? Because talks are stuck. Politics are messy on both sides. And let's be honest, Trump and Brussels don't exactly have a cozy relationship. If things go south, the EU could get slammed with a 50% flat tariff. That's not just a penalty, that's an economic missile. And you can bet the EU will retaliate. That's how trade wars start. 4. The fog of uncertainty. This one doesn't make headlines, but it's very real. Instead of a dramatic move, Trump might simply let things drag on. No new deals, no clear guidance, no fireworks, just prolonged uncertainty. This is what some experts are calling kicking the can. And that uncertainty? It's brutal for businesses. Companies can't plan ahead. Prices stay volatile, investments stall. It's like putting the global economy in limbo, and nobody likes limbo. So, handshake deals, timeout cards, tariff hammers, and foggy uncertainty. But no matter which path Trump picks, there's one question we all need to ask. Who actually pays the price? Is it foreign governments, U.S. companies, or you, the American consumer? Part 4. Who actually pays the tariff? Let's break down who really pays for these tariffs, because there's a common misconception here. Imagine Walmart imports a vacuum cleaner from China that costs $100. Now, with a 10% tariff, Walmart has to pay an extra $10 in taxes, so their cost becomes $110. So what happens next? Do they just absorb that extra $10 and reduce their profit? Usually not. Instead, Walmart passes that cost on to you, the consumer. That means the vacuum's price at the checkout goes up from $100 to $110. Now, President Trump often says tariffs are a tax on foreign countries. Sounds good in theory, right? But in reality, the tax is paid first by U.S. importers, like Walmart, and then it trickles down to American shoppers through higher prices. So, the bottom line? Tariffs end up increasing what you pay for everyday products. And speaking of higher prices, that leads us to the next big question. Will these tariffs cause inflation? Let's find out. Part 5. Will this cause inflation? Let's get straight to the point. Yes, tariffs do cause inflation. Here's why. Tariffs are basically taxes on imported goods. When these goods get more expensive, that cost doesn't just disappear. It gets passed on, often to you, the consumer. Think about Walmart, for example. Around 70% of everything sold there is imported. So if tariffs push up import costs, you'll likely see higher prices on the shelves. Take clothing. 97% of the clothes Americans buy aren't made in the U.S. Why? Because it's cheaper to produce them overseas. Workers in countries like Bangladesh earn around 87 cents an hour. That's a fraction of what American workers earn. There's no way U.S. manufacturers can compete on cost alone. So what happens if tariffs rise on all these imports? Simple. Prices go up. Unless you're ready to drop $500 on a Kirby vacuum or $80 on a plain t-shirt, expect inflation to hit your wallet. And it's not just clothing and vacuums. These cost increases ripple through the economy, affecting electronics, furniture, and even pharmaceuticals. But tariffs aren't just economic, they're political and legal too. So, what legal hurdles could stand in the way of Trump's tariff plans? Let's dive into that next. Part 6. Legal risks and political roadblocks. Now, here's a big question. Can Trump just slap on a 10% tariff on all imports without Congress saying anything? The short answer is sort of, but it's complicated. The U.S. Constitution actually gives Congress the power to set tariffs. That's their job, deciding tax rates on imports. But over the years, Congress has passed laws giving the president some authority to act without their approval, especially when it comes to national security or unfair trade practices. For example, there's Section 232, which lets the president impose tariffs if imports threaten national security. Then there's Section 301, which covers unfair trade practices or violations of trade agreements. Trump has used both to impose tariffs in the past. But, and this is important, the courts have pushed back. Several of Trump's tariffs have been ruled illegal by the U.S. Court of International Trade, and while appeals are ongoing, this adds serious uncertainty. So even if Trump wants to implement a sweeping 10% tariff, there's a good chance courts or Congress could block or delay it. Think of it like what happened with Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. Congress and the courts got involved, creating a legal showdown. It's that same kind of tug of war that could slow down or stop broad tariff moves. So legal and political roadblocks aren't just theoretical. They could play a major role in what actually happens next. But legal hurdles aside, the bigger question is this: will Trump actually go through with it, or will he change course like he has before? Let's dive into what experts think in the next part. Part 7. Will Trump actually go through with it? So, will Trump actually slap a universal 10% tariff on all imports starting July 9? Well, there are two likely scenarios. First, he might just backtrack. Remember, Trump has changed his mind before. Back in 2021, he called Bitcoin a scam. Fast forward to 2024, and suddenly he wants to make the US the crypto capital of the world. That's a 180-degree turn. Tariffs? He's been known to announce big plans and then dial them back when the timing or pressure isn't right. Second, the smarter play might be targeted tariffs. Most experts agree a full-scale 10% tariff on everything is unlikely. Instead, expect more focused moves. Tariffs on specific countries, especially China, where trade tensions remain high. So don't be surprised if you see some countries getting a pass while others get hit hard. Now, with that uncertainty hanging in the air, let's talk about what this means for investors and markets. Because whether it's full steam ahead or strategic pause, the impact will ripple through the economy in some pretty big ways. Part 8, Investor Takeaways and Market Impact. All right, let's talk about what this all means for investors like you and me. The big takeaway: expect market volatility. When uncertainty rises, risk rises, and investors absolutely hate unpredictability. So, what should you watch closely? Keep an eye on the currency markets, especially the euro and yen, since trade tensions can cause sharp swings. The bond market will also react as investors try to gauge economic growth and inflation. Certain sectors are more vulnerable. Think autos, retail, and pharmaceuticals, industries heavily exposed to imports and tariffs. Meanwhile, defensive sectors like domestic manufacturing, utilities, and inflation hedges could provide some cushion in stormy times. And here's a warning: if these tensions spiral into a full-blown trade war with the European Union, buckle up. Markets could get turbulent fast. With all that in mind, let's step back and wrap up what this means going forward. So, what's really going to happen after July 9th? Honestly, nobody knows for sure, not even Trump himself. The tariffs could stay paused, they could snap back hard, or somewhere in between. One thing is clear, though: trade wars aren't free lunches. They come with real costs: higher prices, market uncertainty, and global tension. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the US should keep tariffs to protect American jobs, even if that means we all pay a little more at the checkout? Or is free trade worth the risk? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll be tracking this story as it unfolds, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.